He was 17, barely old enough to drive when they pulled him into that back room at the precinct. It's all too familiar. Just tell us what you saw, the detective said. Then pushed a little photo across the table, and it was his friend on the photo. Well, not just his friend, but more like a big brother. The kind of guy who walked him home when things got rough on the block. So, of course, the detective will lean in and say something like, "You don't even have to testify. Just confirm what we already know." But he couldn't, or he wouldn't, because outside that room in the streets where loyalty wasn't optional, the word snitch was a death sentence. And inside, where he'd soon find himself locked up for years, it meant isolation, violence, or maybe even worse. So he stayed quiet. He didn't tell them what he saw that night, like the gun, the blood, the moment everything happened. He took the hit instead, pleaded to something that basically he didn't even do. Because in this world, silence was safer than truth. But that silence cost him a decade of his life. So today on the Conviction Fiction, we're peeling back the layers on a topic no one wants to admit they think about, but it's snitching. What it means, what it costs, and how it's shaping the lives of people on both sides of the bars. This is the price of silence, snitching, survival, and street codes. Let's get into it. All right, guys, that was just a brief intro into what we're talking about today. This is Antoine Rivers, your host, the host of the Conviction Fiction. I want to thank you guys for joining, for subscribing. I was able to see a lot of people over the past weekend that support this show. I want to thank you guys for just being out there, seeing these events, because it's very important. Especially with the pod movement. We had a proclamation for Christopher Willers over the past weekend, who will be a guest on the show very soon. So I'm looking forward to that. But what we're talking about today is that word snitching, right? Like the character I was just talking about it's a fictional character. This D-Lo Manning, Daryl D-Lo Manning. At the time of his arrest, he was about 17. He's from the east side of Atlanta, right? Daryl, better known as D-Lo to his friends, was raised by his grandmother after his mother fell into addiction. It's a story we'll see often in urban neighborhoods wherein the grandmother is the parent, right? Make sure that the kids get to school, make sure that they eat, all because the mother fell victim to addiction, maybe some type of maybe crack, cocaine, meth. And then what's also always missing almost in these type of scenarios is the father. All right. Now, his older brother was a neighborhood legend, D-Lo. I mean, he was feared and respected. He had a talent for writing music, he could rap. But growing up around those hustlers not only fueled the bars that he had, but it made it hard to see a future beyond the block. I mean, you're making money on the block with drugs. Why not stay there? So anyway, one night, D-Lo was with his cousin and two others during a corner store robbery that turned deadly. The clerk got shot. D-Lo didn't pull the trigger, but he saw everything, right? Now, here's the dilemma. Later, the police brought him in, right? They had been investigating, so they brought him in and they offered him a deal to basically say, talk and go home, right? Or stay silent and we're just going to charge you with it. But threats were already circling. He was warned, say anything and you won't make it to trial, right? You're not going to go. You're basically going to plea to a case that you didn't even do, and you're going to serve some time for it. Now, the outcome in this story was that D-Lo, he kept quiet. He didn't cooperate. He took the plea. Neighborhood legend, right? But he also served 10 years for a crime he didn't commit, because speaking up meant risking his life. So at 28 years old now, he's home, calmer, wiser. He performs spoken word and speaks at youth centers. He does poetry. Remember back in the day, he used to write. He's a rapper, right? And he also warns others not just about prison, but about the weight of silence. Right? He talks about silence now. But he remained silent for 10 years. Right? That's one of the things they say when you are arrested. Like you have the right to remain silent. But have you ever wondered where the whole no snitching rule really came from? Where did it really originate? Why do we believe, especially in certain communities, black and brown communities, all communities? I've been around um Aryans and MS-13. I've been around gang members. I've been around stuff, not just black and brown people, but white people. And we want to know where that rule really came from. Where did that no snitching rule came from? Well, it isn't just about being tough or keeping street business private. This code, this silence is historical. It's rooted in survival. So let's take it back a little bit. Let's take it back. Now, back in the early 20th century, black and brown communities, mainly black people, didn't have a reason to trust the police. I mean, you had crooked cops, racist judges, the system, and it's still kind of hit or miss today. But the system wasn't built or it isn't built to protect them. It was built to control them, right? It's like the new slavery. So when things went down, more often than not, and this is where a lot of the gangs came from. So when things went down, people handled it in-house, right? This is our neighborhood. This is what happened. We're going to just take care of it ourselves, because if we let the police handle it and the justice system handle it, then it's really going to be bad for them. Not only, it's like akin to a kid doing something bad in the neighborhood, and then one of the parents or somebody else's parent or auntie calls that kid in and gives them a whipping. They do the discipline in the neighborhood. So disputes were settled on that block. Information was kept close, and talking to the police, man, that wasn't justice. That was betrayal, because you're going to turn this guy or this kid or this person over to the justice system. They're going to take them away and basically handle them, like put them, sentence them 30, 40 years. Now, over time, what evolved into what we now call the stop snitching culture is what happened. This evolved into that. Now, inside prison, that code takes on a whole new level, right? I've seen some stuff like, okay, even if you were thought of having spoke about something that you weren't supposed to be speaking about, you can put your life in danger. You put your manhood in danger, right? You're like a little girl, to say it in a kind of term. And that's not to be something that I am making a gender thing, but like, I mean, that was kind of soft. It was kind of pussy. Well, maybe not on this show. I shouldn't say that, but it's not just the principle. Not snitching isn't just a principle. It's currency. It's a survival tactic. Because not only if you snitch, you don't just lose your respect, you can also lose your safety, because word will travel fast on that brick, right? On that yard, word travels fast. If you testify, cooperated, or even got accused of telling, then you're marked, right? Isolation, assaults, extortion, it's open season on you. And that's just not paranoia. I'm telling you, folks, that's real. Ask anyone who served time. If you're known as a snitch, then you are definitely putting yourself at risk, right? So it's a scary notion. But we're going to get deeper into the whole snitching culture, why people do it, why people don't do it, right? Let's go back to D-Lo. We talked about him earlier. He knew the rules. At 17, when cops offered him a deal to talk, he stayed silent. Not because he was guilty, but because in his world, telling meant dying slowly, either out here or behind the walls. But here's the twist. Even when that silence leads to a heavier sentence, when you're getting 30, 40 years, when it means taking the fall for someone else, people still uphold it. Why do they uphold it? Because for many, that code is the only thing they've ever seen work. That's the only thing they've ever seen work. It's loyalty. It's belonging. It's like, we gonna handle this ourselves, man. Like, y'all just look out for me, but I'm gonna take the hit for this. It's identity in a world that has took everything else from them or from us. But that loyalty is not always returned. Some people stick to the code and go to jail, and they'll never get looked after for nothing. They don't get no money on their commissary. They don't get visits. They don't get, those care packages. They don't get none of that stuff. And they did what, 10, like in this case, D-Lo, he ended up doing 10 years for somebody else and never got a care package. And that's where the heartbreak lives. D-Lo, who we talked about, he knew the rules, man. Like, you taking a chance on these guys. First of all, they're 17. Most of us at 17, we have no earthly idea. We think we know what's going on. But most 17 years old, they'll profess loyalty, but they really aren't loyal. I mean, especially nowadays in the world of PlayStations and virtual reality games and rappers and all this kind of stuff. So D-Lo made a choice in this scenario, and now he's 17 years old, sitting in a cold interview room with two detectives leaning in close, offering him a deal. He didn't pull the trigger, like I said, but he knew who did. And would he say their name? He can't say their name. That would make him a snitch. And in his world, that word was heavier than the sentence he was about to catch. So back then, we know that, and it's even prevalent today, but in D-Lo's case, snitching meant weakness. It still can mean weakness. It's disloyalty. It means putting your life in someone else's hands and risking everything. So D-Lo chose silence, and that silence cost him a decade behind bars. But time does something to you. It kind of strips away the noise, the myths, all that stuff that you thought about, the mask that you wear just to survive. Over the years, D-Lo started to realize something. The code he protected didn't protect him back. His people didn't ride for him. No letters, no visits, just silence. Same as he did when he could have told on people, he remained silent. So now he getting that silence back. He went in with a rep and came out with regrets. Now he says now that if he could talk to that younger version of himself, he'd say, don't confuse fear with loyalty, son. Don't trade your life to protect someone who wouldn't protect your back. And here's the truth. We have to be real about this. Some of us that went in that were trying to protect our homies, or, we don't want to be labeled a snitch. Those people, those homies didn't look out for us. Now, it kept us safe. We didn't have any harm for 10, 20 years or however long we were sentenced. But they didn't look out for us. We blindly gave up safety for disloyalty. In our communities, especially those hit hardest by poverty, policing, and prison, silence gets mistaken for honor. But sometimes silence is a trap, and a generational one. Because what's happening is, what if D-Lo had a girlfriend at 17? What if D-Lo had, with his girlfriend, had a baby on the way? Now we got a fatherless child that's going to be, without their father for 10 years because they didn't tell on somebody else. Now, that's when you hear the story of Jody taking care of that baby. Now, that's, the baby mom might put Jody as the father instead of D-Lo. So, yes, snitching has been weaponized by the system. People have been coerced, lied on, turned against each other. That's real. But we also have to ask, when does silence serve justice? And when does it serve dysfunction? D-Lo found his redemption not by rewriting the past, but by telling the truth now. Maybe that's what we have to do. We just got to hold it down. And then when we get out, we're like, man, y'all left me out for cold. You know what I'm saying? Y'all left me in the wilderness. Y'all left me for dead. And I'll remain loyal to y'all, which makes it another awkward situation because now D-Lo, he mentors youth, he writes, he speaks honestly about the weight of that choice. And because of breaking the silence for him, it wasn't about betraying the code. It was about reclaiming his voice. You gave him 14 years. And that's what healing looks like today, guys. So that's maybe we need to take the time to stop asking who told and start asking who's ready to tell the truth. All right. And telling the truth doesn't mean, snitching on somebody because there's another side to this. There is always the other side because if you talk to a defense attorney, a public defender, we need to get one of those guys on the show. Or maybe you can talk to a prison reform advocate. We've had them on the show. And they'll tell you, these people will tell you, sometimes cooperating with law enforcement is the only way someone walks out of the courtroom with their freedom, or at least a lighter sentence. Now, prosecutors offer what they call a cooperation agreement. You give us something, we'll give you something. You testify, give a statement. You might have to wear a wire, a microphone in cases. We might shave off some of the years, even decades from your sentence. You telling that to a 17-year-old, decades. They haven't lived 2 decades, but you're saying we're going to knock off decades from your sentence. In a broken system, that's a powerful incentive. I'm going to say it again. In a broken system, that's a powerful incentive, especially when you're talking about someone that's young, a youth, somebody that hasn't even experienced life. But here's the catch, and there's always that catch, because these deals come with fine print. Sometimes people cooperate and still get the book thrown at them, or they get labeled a snitch with no real protection inside, no guarantees. And once that label sticks, it follows you into prison, into the streets when you come home, into job interviews, because if you might end up working with somebody that know that you're a snitch, housing applicant, everywhere you go, that label is going to follow you. And sometimes people are pressured to give up names when they don't even have names to give. They start lying. Innocent folks start getting caught up in plea deals they don't even understand. Or worse, they end up being coerced into lying. And these prison reform advocates, I will tell you, you need transparency in how cooperation is used because it's being weaponized unevenly. You got people who cooperated and got released, while others who didn't talk are still buried under life without parole. There's no clear rule book to this. It's just risk. It's just a real big risk. And it's time that we change the narrative on this, right? I'm not advocating snitching. I would never do that. What I am advocating is truth and justice. That's what I'm advocating. So yeah, cooperation might lead to a lighter sentence, but it might also make you a target or destroy your credibility or leave you with no protection from the very people you once feared. That's the impossible choice many of our people face. Now, you either pick between the law or the code. Why are we putting people in these situations where they have to pick between the law or the code of the streets, right? Between freedom and fear. Now, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about how people are redefining the code, choosing truth over tradition, and breaking generational cycles of violence. So stay with me. I know it's a tough subject, but this is something that we need to get through because if we want to truly change the narrative, we got to go through like what people think. For instance, like you got a dude on the inside right now, right? He's inside the system. He been there. He hard, right? He been locked up for all this time. And, first thing he going to say, man, snitching don't mean what y'all think. Out here, it ain't about justice. It's survival. You tell, you get labeled. You get touched. That's just what it is, right? In other words, he's saying, if you want to walk the yard, you better keep your mouth shut. That's basically what he's saying. I'm going to translate all this for you, right? So then you got the family perspective, right? They're frustrated and confused. Um, this is a family member affected by the code of silence, right? You had the little, my brother ain't no snitch. He just told the truth. But folks in the neighborhood treat him like he's the enemy. How are we supposed to break cycles if the truth gets punished too? Right? My brother ain't no snitch. What they saying is you want the truth to set you free. But in this world, truth don't always look like freedom because he told the truth and now he's fearing for his life. I fear for my life because I'm the brother of a snitch or the sister of a snitch that's going to get the same repercussions as if I did it. Like I'm harboring him. I don't supposed to talk to him either no more. That's my family. But you can demonize, ostracize communities just with the premise of telling on somebody, right? Now, let's talk about like gang members, right? Now they mentors. A lot of gang members I know, they now mentoring people and doing great things. And sometimes they speak with regret and wisdom, reflecting on a life of loyalty to the streets, right? They'll say something like, well, we taught these kids to stay silent even when it hurt them. I'm not proud of that. Silence ain't loyalty when it protects the people doing harm. So what that statement actually means is that you can't save yourself by being loyal to the wrong things. That's a lesson that we all learn. You cannot save yourself by being loyal to the wrong things. And don't learn that lesson too late. Then we got grandmothers. What was up? My baby didn't do this. I raised him in a tough neighborhood and he was good. We raised our babies not to talk. But now I got grandsons in juvenile hall. I got sons in prison because they follow that street code instead of the truth. That code don't feed you. It buries you. Now, this coming from a grandma. What she basically saying is sometimes she wished they didn't understand or that they did understand that the street don't love you like your family does. Right? You go do 20, 30 years behind the wall, your street code upholders, those gang members, or I ain't gonna say I that's a whole nother show. But basically, sometimes you have to understand that the street will not love you like your family. Right? And then you got the police officers, right? They always, they just trying to serve the community, which they do. There are some great officers out there. But some of them, they just believe like snitching is just sharing information. They get it. When the community is being portrayed by the system, why would they trust it with their secrets? They're basically saying trust is earned. And if that trust is earned, a lot of us, right, in the system haven't earned it. Trust is earned. And a lot of us in the system haven't earned it. And that's even with the police, right? Why would you tell on somebody and it's going to get them 30 years, 40 years? Why would I tell on myself to get 20, 30, 40 years, right? Here's the thing of it is we got to change the narrative. We got to stop doing shit like this. We got to stop putting ourselves in positions, right? And then that way we won't have to worry about it. That's why I say changing the narrative, right? Now, a lot of people, like, they do it and they get out and like, guess what? Ain't nobody else doing that time for me. So I'm going to choose my daughter over that street code shit. I'm going to choose my daughter. I'm going to choose my family. I'm not taking the fall for nobody. It's like, what's that movie? New Jack City. Oh, this bigger than me. Kareem Akbar. He's the real head of the CMB. Not me, right? It's bigger than me. Basically, you're saying, I'll take the freedom and the chance to rebuild no matter what anyone says about me, which could be extremely dangerous, right? It can be extremely dangerous, right? So, what's the cost of silence in a system that's already broken? Is silence like a shield, like it's going to protect you, or is it a cage that's going to lock you away? When we choose to remain silent, when we decide not to speak, there's a price. Not just in years lost or the lives that go untold or the lives that go untold, right? There is a price when we decide not to speak. But guess what? There's a price when we decide to speak, right? In the weight of a world that demands loyalty without justice, a world where your silence is often mistaken for strength and truth is buried beneath the weight of fear, that's a system that sometimes punishes the most vulnerable. Silence can feel like the only form of survival. The code, that unspoken rule that says, don't talk, you can't trust the police, it's been passed down from generation to generation because it's all we've known. How about doing something out of the box? Don't break the law. Don't put yourself in the positions where you are going to have to choose not telling on somebody or telling on somebody or telling on yourself. Don't become a part of the system. I know it's how we protect ourselves from betrayal and further harm. But does it really protect us to even be in those positions? Does it actually heal us? As we've heard today, breaking that silence comes at a cost. Whether it's the loneliness of a prison sentence, the alienation of a community that turns its back on you, or the guilt of what you didn't say when the truth could have set someone free, right? It's all a path forward towards something else, man. What if instead of keeping silent to protect the broken code, we start to build new codes of loyalty? Codes that say, we're going to root this in healing, truth, and justice. A code that says, hey, man, I'm not going to let you go and do something stupid. A code that says, no, I'm not going to let you rob that corner store. A code that says, hey, man, we got to stop selling these drugs, bro. We got to go buy a business. We got to go become entrepreneurs legally, right? How about we set a new code of loyalty? Like, I love you enough to not put yourself at risk, which may put me at risk because they might ask me to tell on you. And then it's going to be a decision that I have to make. Do I want to stay home with my family? Or do I want to remain loyal to you? If I stay home with my family, I probably could get harmed or they probably give me a lighter sentence, but then I can't be protected because I'm labeled a snitch. Okay, so let's just change the narrative. Let's just we shouldn't have to be forced to tell on somebody. We shouldn't have to be forced to remain loyal to somebody that's going to probably not remain loyal to us. What if we learn to speak for each other instead of against each other? What if we could break these cycles, rebuild broken relationships, and find a way to move forward together? It's not easy. It's hard to tell somebody, don't break the law. It won't happen overnight. But the first step, like D-Lo found out, is acknowledging that silence isn't always a strength. Instead of letting those people go commit the crime by being silent, just going with the flow, break the silence and say, hey, look, I don't think this is a good idea. Sometimes it's the very thing that keeps us chained to the past, being silent, right? Here's another question. Can we rewrite this code? Can loyalty to truth and justice and healing emerge as the new standard? Maybe it starts with us. Maybe it starts with you as you're listening to this podcast. But as we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this. The truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. And that's a quote from Gloria Steinem, right? The truth will set you free, but first it will make you uncomfortable. Now, this journey of breaking the silence is not about promoting one side of a broken system or the other. It's about accountability, fairness, and justice for everyone involved. It's about speaking the truth, no matter how hard it may be. so we can start to rebuild a system that actually serves justice, not just the ones in power. Basically, what I'm saying on this episode and what we should do to rewrite the narrative is start holding our people accountable when we know they're doing wrong, when we know that there's a better way. That way you can avoid putting yourself in a situation where you are labeled a snitch or being a snitch or doing time for something that you didn't do. I know it sounds way out of the box, man, but what we've discussed today isn't about condoning betrayal. It's about rejecting a system that forces people to choose between silence and a broken version of loyalty. This is about advocating for a true justice system where accountability doesn't come with the cost of human dignity or safety. So, no, I'm not here pushing the snitch agenda. I'm not here pushing be a snitch. No, I'm not here for that. I'm here fighting for truth. Because if you really care about somebody, if you really want to make a difference in your community, then you would encourage your brothers to be and your sisters to be leaders of the community. You would encourage them to not cause harm to their community, not cause harm to their future generations, right? For healing. A justice system that holds people accountable without turning us against each other is what most of our organizations or gangs were founded on, right? We held each other accountable, especially when you're doing wrong. Now, I know we got drugs and all this negative influences out there that, can pull you one way or the other, but we have to rewrite the narrative. I invite you to join this conversation, share this episode, and let's talk about how we as a community can change the narrative. What does justice look like when truth and accountability are at its core? Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let's create a space for real change, because together we can rewrite this story, one where justice and truth lead the way. That's our show for today. I'll see you soon on The Conviction Fiction.